a lot of people think life begins when you're born or conceived or whatever other answers they're coming up with these days. For some people, though, life actually begins the day a doctor tells them that if they don't make some serious changes in their lives, they're going to die. You see, my life began the morning of my 41st birthday in January of 2019. I stood staring in the mirror, looking back on my life after stepping on the scale and finding out I was over 400 pounds for the second time in my life. You know, my dad died when I was 17. So my choice was plain to see in front of me. Either I take charge of my health, make the necessary changes to live, or do nothing and die knowing that my daughter, being only 6 years old, would spend the majority of her life calling some other man daddy. Can't you see? There's no one coming to save me in this moment. It was me who had to become the hero in my story. You know, we live in a world that has a system in place to remove all accountability from every decision we ever make. Taking accountability and fixing the problem is painful. It's like a journey through the pit of hell while feeling the pain of every lost soul that resides there. But in the end, the journey becomes the foundation of your testimony. My fight has become my calling. So if you're out there struggling and you hear the sound of my voice, I'm telling you that your story is not over. As long as you have breath in your lungs, there is still time. But it's your fight, your story, your moment to stand up and do what heroes do. It's a long road ahead, and it sucks. And maybe you're thinking you can't do it. But I'm here to tell you that you have all the tools you need. You always have, and you always will, because you are enough. And most of all, you are worth it. Nobody is more capable than you. Yeah, Friday! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be listening. Thanks for making me part of your day. This is episode 251 of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast. I have a couple announcements before we get started today. Listen, I want to celebrate. So this is 6.5 years in the making here, but I recently just passed on the Connect, on Weight Watchers Connect social media app. I just passed 6,000 followers, so I'm at 6,100 followers right now, and I just want to just take a moment and celebrate that. It's been a great growth. Think about it. If I can get 900 more followers before the end of this year, it's averaging 1,000 followers a year, right? Yeah, that would be great, right? I'm in a little bit more, slightly different camera angle today. I want to, in my office here, it's Christmas all year round, starting now, right? I took down some this from the attic, and I decided I got all these little mini, like tiny little ornaments like this, and I'm just gonna leave it out all year round and just gonna keep it in the background there. And right next to it, I'm keeping the Christmas theme, and you can see my favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story, and if you haven't seen it, shame on you. But there is a leg lamp in the movie, and that's a miniature version. One day I'm going to have the full-size version. You know what I'd love to have is behind me in that spot right behind me there, on either side of this couch when I have the camera set up the right way, there's two lamps. And if I could replace them both with the full-size version of the leg lamp from that movie, how awesome would that be to have that in the background? Oh, man, I would love that. I would love that. That would be so classic. But yes, in my office, it's going to be Christmas all year round. I'm never taking that tree down. Once I get it set up, I kind of want like red and green lights, so we're gonna work that out on there before we put some ornaments on it. But yes, that is a little addition. And then right next to it, you can't really see. There she is. There's Terry right next to her. You can't really see because I'm in my big head's in the way. But is a picture of me and Terry. That's the day she handed me the 150-pound charm. That is a day that I will never forget for the rest of my life. And she is kind of showcased in this office. You know, that moment between us, it was a special moment. And it's not just in that spot behind me, but on the wall behind me as well is a framed photo with a written note from her from that day. It was just a great moment. But she is very special to me, and there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about her. And in her, the reminder of her in this room is constant. And I always see her face. So thank you, Terry, for being a part of my journey and being really the catalyst to make this time the last time. Everything you see is because of you. All of the effort of this podcast was fueled by your wisdom, your knowledge, your tutelage. Everything that I am today is because of your direction, and I thank you so much for everything you've done for my journey, for my life, for my family. Everything. Can't thank you enough. Now, with that being said, if you are in Weight Watchers and you are looking for a supported group, you could come sit with me every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at the best workshop of the week, Coach Sophie F., 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You gotta be there. There's a bunch of people there who are doing the work, who are working hard, and who are a great support system for themselves, for each other. Everybody is invested. Everybody's doing the work. Everybody wants to be a part of something, and everybody understands. Everybody in that room understands you get what you put in, right? If you never participate, if you never do anything, you don't get anything out of it. And that's what's great about that group. 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Coach Sophie F. Be there this Saturday. Well, enough of that. Let's get into this! Journey updates. So weigh-in this week was September 20th, 2025. I stepped on the scale and weighed 204.4 pounds. This is a 1.2 pound gain. Total pounds lost since January of 2019, 191.2 pounds lost. I currently sit 8.8 pounds until my goal. My work stats for the week go from September 14th, 2025 to September 14th, 2025 to September 20th, 2025. Total steps taken in that time is 80,273 steps, a little shorter than that last week, but I still averaged around 11,468 steps a day. Total miles walked, 34.25 miles. That's a little shorter than last week, but I still averaged just about 5 miles a day, 4.9 miles a day total walking miles. Hey, look, I tell you all the time, it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. And that's the theme I'm going to get into today. That's the theme. But you know what? You got to love, if you've been here any amount of time with me, you know right away that every single time I have approached a goal, it has been this long, dramatic approach. And I'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it just keeps going like that and keep inching and keep inching. And sometimes I'm right on, like I'm 0.2 away from the goal and I got to wait another 7 days. Right. But it's all part of the journey, man. I can't honestly say this journey hasn't taught many things to me that have nothing to do with the scale, that have nothing to do with health. I guess, you know what? Maybe it does. Maybe patience has to do with health because people with no patience probably make themselves very stressed out, and that would be a detriment to your health, right? But this journey has taught me patience. It has taught me patience more than anything else. And you know, it's funny. I used to joke around. I used to say, the day that God created me, right? He had all the ingredients there on the shelf, right? And it was like the patience ingredient was on back order that week. So he didn't have any to give. Like, he gave me a little and he's like, all right, sorry, I'm out of it. That's the rest of it. And he gave me everything else I need, right? And so the rest I had to work for. The rest I had to work to create. But it's all part of the journey. Everything in perspective. I could do this now, right? I could sit here 6.5 years in and I can look back at 6.5 years of work and I could see all of the moments and all of the valuable lessons that came along with this. The problem is, you know, how many times I attempted this, if I think about it. How many times I attempted to lose weight, how many times I failed. And I'm looking back at all of it, right? And I am not beating myself up here. I'm just telling truth. Every single time I failed it was literally my own doing. Literally my own mentality. Literally it was me in my own way, as you hear me say countless times on this podcast, ever since the beginning. It didn't matter. I'm not even talking about just the beginning, like in 2019, the beginning of this journey. But I've been obese all my life, okay? So literally, we can go back to infancy kind of a thing. Every single time I failed, I was in my own way. I was thinking things should go a certain way, and I allowed that thinking to rule my action. And I guess the most valuable thing I learned, and I've said this before on the podcast, and I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over and over again. But you know what? People need to hear it over and over and over again because they don't get it. They just don't get it. How could that be, Don? How could that be? They don't get it. The most valuable lesson I learned in 6.5 years in this journey is that the idea of perfection is a delusion. I'll let that sink in a minute. The idea of perfection is a delusion. Every single time things didn't go my way, and it could have been the stupidest thing, like I planned to walk today, and then the time that I planned to walk comes and goes, and I can't walk. The amount of drama I would go through because I didn't live up to what I said. Essentially was the catalyst to create the quitting nature of that journey every single time. And it could have been many other things too. I'm just using I didn't walk today as an example, right? I mean, it literally could be so many other things. But in this case, I'm using the walking as an example. I coincided this with the movement of the scale. To me, doing things perfectly meant a perfect scale result. And I'm sure many of you think that still now. Unless you've been listening to me for a while, then I hope I've drilled it in your head between my walk talks, between this podcast. I really believe, I want to believe in my mind that I drilled it in your head. But if I didn't, here it comes again. This whole thing, this whole idea that you did something perfectly means you're guaranteed some result, it's a farce. It's a pipe dream. It's a fantasy It's a fantasy less realistic than leprechauns and rainbows and pots of gold at the end of them, with unicorns and whatever other mystical creatures we want to get into. That's how fake it is. That's how unbelievably false it is. The reality for probably 99.9999999%, I'm never going to say 100%, because even Clorox is not 100%. Everything is 99.9%, so I'm going to go with it. But the idea for the majority of you is that you do things a perfect way and you deserve a perfect result. Or you're guaranteed, I should say. Who's to argue about deserve? You're guaranteed a certain result. And a lot of this is, a natural thing that happens because of the way the whole system is designed. You show up to that workshop every 7 days. You weigh in every 7 days. So it becomes, and then when you succeed, you have coaches that say, well, what'd you do differently this week? Right? And in reality, you could have someone like me who does the same exact thing every week and still gets different results. I think that there's only one way this stigma breaks. The idea that, number one, you have to be perfect, and then number two, when you are perfect, you get the result you want. Those are two stigmas that essentially are roadblocks in your way for you to becoming the greatest version of yourself, because literally the minute one of those two things doesn't go your way, you're ready to throw in the towel and just pig out until Monday. That's the case. Oh, I messed up. It's Tuesday and I messed up, so I'll just start again next Monday. It's like it's the equivalent of being in the World Series and you strike out your first at bat and then volunteering to strike out every at bat until the end of that game. Every time you got up to the plate, you voluntarily struck out because you struck out the first time. But you hear someone like me tell you perfection is a delusion. It's not attainable. It will never happen. And I say it over and over and over again. So much so, I feel like, why would they want to hear this again? But if I'm a seed sower Sometimes you got to put seeds in the same spot, right? If you didn't see a plant sprout up yet, maybe you got to drop a little more, right? Maybe you got to water it a little bit. Maybe you got to add some fertilizer. Whatever I got to do. Whatever I have to do to make it right. That's what I have to do. I think that the only way to realize what I'm saying, the truth of what I'm saying, is that you have to experience the moment. The moment where the entire illusion is revealed. Okay? And many of you have seen the other side of this illusion. I mean, how many of us can say we had a terrible week and then all of a sudden you still lose? Like you walked in like, oh man, this is going to be a terrible week. I know it. I know it. I blew this week. I blew it. And you step on the scale and you're down a few ounces. You're sitting there and you're shocked. First of all, you're shocked. There's not a single one of you who would repeat the previous week because logically, if you get the result you want from the week you had, then you should just repeat it if you had a good result, right? But the fact that instances like this exist prove what I'm saying. And I can't tell you how many times I've had an instant like that where I fully expected, and when, in the beginning of my journey, before following macros, before initiating carnivore, even before removing all processed food from my life. These are the major steps in my journey I'm naming to you right now, okay? These are the major steps. Every single one of those steps contributed, and now that's contributing now is fasting. That's what's contributing now. But every single step I took along the way was calculated in the moment. I had introduced walking into my life. And my moment begins at the introduction of that walking. Because it was also in that moment that I understand, I create kind of accidentally, really. I created the roadmap that I call the checklist challenge now. And I tell you guys about it all the time. If you go to therantingweightwatcher.com, if you have in trouble creating consistency in your life, go to therantingweightwatcher.com and scroll down and you'll see almost to the bottom of the page, you'll see a bunch of PDF documents that I physically wrote. And you can download, you can print them out, and you can, whatever it is you want to do with them. But one of those things is called the checklist challenge. And it's a roadmap, essentially, to creating consistent behavior in your life, especially if you're lacking in the fundamentals of this journey. Anybody who consistently does the fundamentals, and I'm talking about the boring stuff, the boring, tedious stuff that nobody wants to do. Anybody who can do those things consistently finds success. When I went to introduce walking into my life, that roadmap was essentially being created during that time. And it all started with deciding what I can do. You see, we waste a bunch of our years in our journey telling everyone what we can't do. And every time we talk about what we can't do, we program our mind to only focus on what we can't do. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. And you got a list. And to you, I'm sure it looks like a solid list. But to someone like me, it's a list of excuses, not reasons. And if you use that same amount of time, if you used half of that amount of time that you spend telling everybody who will listen to you what you can't do, if you use half of that time telling anybody who will listen what you can do, including yourself, deciding what you can do and then going out and doing it, you would transform your life in this moment. When I started this journey, you heard me say this 1,000 times. When I started this journey, I thought I was too fat to walk. That's the truth. I started off at 395 pounds. That was the day I walked in. The day I walked into WW and finally signed up, it's a magical thing too, because the Saturday before that, when I said I got to do something with my life, I was 403 that Saturday. And just a week later, 395. But anyway, I didn't think I could walk. So my concentration went into what food would I eat. Fast forward 50-pound loss. I decide that it's time to start walking. So 50 pounds less, I'm not too fat to walk anymore, right? Or did I just decide what I can do in that moment? Did I just say it's, stop looking at what you can't do and start looking at what you can do? What can you do? And in that, I was already practicing in that time the idea that perfection was not required, because I was openly relaxed on how I chose my foods on weekends. So I was regimented on what I ate for 19 out of 21 meals a week. And then 2 meals on weekends. So dinner on Saturday, dinner on Sunday was a relaxed choice. And whether or not I counted points or whatever it was at that time. Still, I'm relaxed today, 6.5 years later, for those 2 meals. There's not really a concern. I live by the 97% rule. Anyway, I decided I could walk 20 minutes, 3 days for 8 weeks. And I didn't think I could walk far, so I just stayed in my parking lot. And that's why it was measured by time, because I wasn't leaving my house. So it wasn't just like, go down the street and turn around and come back. It was literally circle around the parking lot at 4 o'clock in the morning and come in the house and take a shower. That's what it was. But I did it for 8 weeks. Fast forward, how many times later, how many phases later, I was walking 5 days a week, and I was measuring miles now, not minutes. But it was the consistent effort over weeks and weeks and weeks of time. And what I call a phase is a block of 8 weeks, right? So phase 1 had a certain rule set. Phase 2 had a certain rule set. It's all mapped out in the checklist challenge. And I'm going to say it like this. When I executed my week exactly as I planned it, I'm not going to say executed it perfectly, because I'd never once executed a week perfectly. When I executed it as I planned, I would still have weeks that I lost and weeks that I gained. I did exactly what I planned to do. As flawed as that plan may have been, I did exactly what I planned to do. And still I had losses, and still I had gains. This is the moment that I realized perfection wasn't definitely not required in this time. And it was more about consistent effort than it was about creating a perfect day. It's more about being consistently imperfect day after day after day. I mean, I tell you guys the amount of steps I take a week for a reason. Because if you go back however many episodes, you're going to see that total number of steps taken, that total number of miles walked. You're going to see that it's different every week. But when I go by the average numbers, they're relatively the same. Even though last week was 90 some odd thousand steps, this week is probably 10,000 steps less. I'm still averaging 11,000 steps a day. And if that's what I do consistently, average 11,000 steps, and they aren't even all done in every day. There's days of the week where it looks like I didn't get off the couch. People don't believe this when I tell them that. There are days where the step count doesn't reach 2,000. But there's days where the step count reaches 30,000. The overall average is what matters. If you got 20 points a day and you ate 40 points one day, 10 points another, at the end of the week, if your average stayed within the total points range, you did your job. It doesn't matter that Tuesday was double the amount of points you should have eaten, because Monday and Wednesday and Thursday was less. In the end, it was the overall package, right? We become so hyper-focused on one moment, and then you get in your way because this moment didn't go your way, and you're a terrible person, and you can't be redeemed to save your life. And then you hear someone like me talk to you. If you happen to talk to me and I'm trying to talk you off the ladder or talk you back from the edge of the cliff, and you would rather sit there and beat yourself up than take the word of someone like me. And I'm not telling you that my word is the end-all, be-all. I'm just saying, look at the body of work. If you think the body of work, if you think that 191 pounds down means that I have been perfect every day for the last 6.5 years, you are deluded. I'm openly telling you, in 6.5 years, I have never had a perfect week. In 6.5 years, I have never had a perfect week. And I also know from the 6.5 years that I'm here that it's not necessary. The problem is you're too busy beating yourself up to ever create the consistency good enough to realize that moment. Do you think that when God created you, he made a mistake? Because you're not perfect? Think about that for a minute. You're sitting here and you're beating yourself up because you didn't do something perfectly. Could you be telling God in this moment, you made me wrong. You did it incorrectly. Whatever you did, you didn't do it right. I'm a nobody. I'm a loser. I can't do anything right. And it's the way you created me. I mean, come on. I'm just using logic here. God knew you were so imperfect. God knew we were all so imperfect that he sent his son to be sacrificed for the imperfection, to create the bridge between the imperfection. He built the bridge in his life. Jesus was born and died 30 some odd years later, creating the pathway for your imperfect life. And yet you could sit here and beat yourself up week after week, month after month, year after year, journey after journey. Because, we all do that. Everybody has more than one occasion where they started a journey and then quit, started and then quit. You could sit here and demand perfection of yourself, knowing that somebody died, somebody was brutally beaten, whipped, spit on, had a crown of thorns pushed on in his head, was stabbed in the side, was nailed to a cross. All of that was done to him. And then he died and spent 3 days in hell. He did all of that knowing it was because you were imperfect. And yet, you demand perfection of the simplest things in your life, like trying to become healthy. Maybe this time it's nailed. Maybe this time it'll sink in. I don't know. All I know is I'm sitting here shouting the truth from the rooftop. It says in the Bible, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." He was talking about your eternal life. I'm talking about your health so you can stick around long enough to do what you were created to do to enter eternal life. I'm just here planting seeds of truth, watering those seeds, fertilizing those seeds in the hope that maybe just maybe, this is the one time you finally get it. If you messed up today, it doesn't matter. Your next meal is your next opportunity. If you mess up on that meal, it doesn't matter. Your next meal is your next opportunity. So long as you're breathing, your next meal is your next opportunity. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. Consistent. Consistently making good choices. Consistently tracking those good choices. Consistently weighing and measuring those choices, no matter how imperfect. Consistency will get you the entire pathway. And doing is the only way of realizing just how free the truth is. I can't spell it out any other way. And that's why it keeps sounding like I'm repeating myself. I really hope something I said sunk in today. Your results are not going to be perfect. Your work is not going to become perfect. None of this is perfect. The thing is, you didn't have to be perfect to create your problem. You didn't have to be perfect to create your weight problem, your health problems. You had to be consistent to create those problems. If you look at the years of your behavior, you were definitely consistent creating the problem. So it's not perfection that's going to fix the problem. You have to be just as consistent doing things the opposite way to fix the problem. Consistency created it, consistency will fix it, and it's on you to get out of your own way. Let go of the past, let go of the problems, let go of the trauma, because whatever that is that causes you to do what you do, at some point it becomes your choice to hold on to it. If there was a traumatic event in your past that created this problem, and your coping mechanisms to deal with that trauma, at some point it becomes you holding on to the trauma. Because you know the trauma, you're familiar with the trauma. And everything that could be new that's on this, that's scary. Until you let go, until you stop believing that delusional nonsense, that this is not your life, nothing will ever change. Nothing changes unless you change. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.